The Miami Dolphins pulled off a decent, respectable bounty of NFL draft prospects. They've got 8 young rookies on board on this 2025 roster, which includes a Doak Walker Award winner for the nation's top running back, not in 2024, but in 2023. You've got 3 nose tackles, not 1, not 2, but 3 nose tackles and one of the top 10 offensive guards or offensive linemen in this draft. I am Omar Kelly, Dolphins columnist from the Miami Herald, here with Dolphins in Depth. Joining me is Isaiah Smalls, who enjoyed, I think, your first NFL draft.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It was it's all over the place, right? It's a lot of action, a lot of it's really hectic. So I enjoyed it though. It was dope.
It's hectic, especially when teams got a lot of picks, and then teams like Chris Greer, who often makes a lot of moves. I would argue to you that the most controversial thing that Chris Greer did during the 2025 NFL draft was in a draft where the meat of the draft, the meat and potatoes, was in the 2nd through 4th round. The Miami Dolphins, they traded away their 3rd and both of their 4th round picks. I found that quite interesting, and I can understand it from this standpoint. Jonah Savaiinaea, who was one of the universally viewed top 10 offensive linemen in this draft. And when I say top 10, I mean guys who can come in and be day 1 starters, which is what the Miami Dolphins absolutely needed. They moved up to go get him. How many spots? Was it 11 or something like that?
Yeah, it was a lot of spots for sure.
Yeah, they moved up 11 spots. He was a 5th pick in the 2nd round. They have a conviction about him. They believe he should be a day 1 starter. Believe he's a good scheme fit. As we discussed in the last podcast, I am not particularly high on him as a player based on the film study that I saw. You acknowledged that you saw him at the Senior Bowl and you didn't notice him or remember him at the Senior Bowl, even though you were looking closely at offensive linemen. Listen, none of that means anything because it's what you do when you get here and how you develop and how you progress. What I do love about his selection is, he's a Polynesian. He's part of Tua's tribe. But not only that, they went to the same high school. Not only that, but he's also a musician. He's a music player. He plays the ukulele. He plays the piano. And you know what Tua likes to do in his off time? He likes to jam, playing all kinds of instruments and playing his music. So I think that these 2 Samoans are going to vibe. And hopefully when you vibe, that will be your quarterback. And he says he's only played for Polynesian quarterbacks. Yeah. He's only protected Polynesian quarterbacks. And he said, God knows what he's doing.
God only wants me to block for my people, I believe was the exact quote, which is funny. So hopefully he can do that at a serviceable, if not exceptional level, and get this offense back on track for sure.
Yeah,
they're gonna need
it. But I will say this, and I did a positional breakdown for the Miami Dolphins looking at the entire depth chart. I did not factor in the undrafted rookies because I ain't learning your name. Sorry. They're very clear and defined rules that Omar Kelly has. And until you start making plays, I'm not learning your name. I don't even know who you are. When you start making plays, I'll learn your number. Then I'll probably try to see if I can learn your name. I have rules. People know me for years. These are the rules. But when I look at that depth chart, and Isaiah, let me break it down for you, okay?
Okay. All right.
They told you they were going to fix your offensive line, right? Isn't that what Chris Greer said to you?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, all right. So, in the efforts to fix your offensive line, Chris Greer has signed James Daniels, who has an Achilles injury. He's going to be healthy for the season. I had him as my top offensive guard that I wanted on the Miami Dolphins. They got him at a very respectable $8 million a year clip. Clap it up. Hopefully he's healthy. Now, what they also did is they signed one of the worst rated offensive linemen in the NFL in Larry Broom last year. And they lost Teron Armstead to retirement. Now, Teron says his knee's bone on bone. He couldn't keep doing it. Had a hell of a career. Arguably, maybe a Hall of Fame career. I'm certain he's going to go into New Orleans Ring of Honor, whatever equivalent of that. I love Teron. I want him to be part of the game. I always encourage players go into NFL front offices. Don't become a coach because they need you more in the front offices. They need more Teron Armsteads in the front offices.
That's real.
Than they do as a coaching staff. Maybe then you wouldn't see what happened to Shedeur Sanders happen as often as it does. I'm gonna avoid that, but you know, this is the old boys network in the front office.
Old boys club, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, but so you take a step back going from Teron Armstead to Patrick Paul. You take a step back going from Kendall Lamb to Larry Broom. Liam Eichenberg is re-signed. Jackson Carman is re-signed. Both of them were problems for your offensive line last year.
For sure.
You replace Robert Jones with James Daniels. Clap it up. Good move.
Upgrade,
and then Jonah Savanea will more than likely, if you're lucky, replace Liam Eichenberg as your starting right guard. Isaiah, where's the improvement? And more importantly, where's the depth?
I think there's certainly a lack of depth, right? You know, they said that they were coming in this draft to fix the offensive line. They took one offensive lineman. So as much as praise that we're giving them about addressing the trenches, let's be clear. They did it primarily on one side of the ball, and they basically drafted 3 guys that play the same position. Now, whether essentially, I know that they believe that they can rotate some of these guys, and that the skill set, specifically with Jordan Phillips, right, is a little bit more expanded, right? Even with Zeke Biggers too, they believe that the skill set was only a small sample size used at their respective colleges, right? And so I believe that the Dolphins think that they can expand their skill set, right? There's not, and so to your point though, I would say that there was upgrade definitely at the guard spot, from Robert Jones to James Daniels, assuming James Daniels can get back to, some version of what he was through those first 4 games of last season, right? Outside of that though, there wasn't really a lot of upgrade, and that's really unfortunate, especially when you're losing a Teron Armstead to retirement. You can only pray, and hopefully the Dolphins fans have been praying that Patrick Paul, the version of Patrick Paul that we see in 2025, is way beyond what we saw in 2024. Granted, small sample size, but it was not great. So it was okay. It was okay. Let me defend
Patrick Paul a little bit. It was okay.
It was okay.
He got ate up a little bit in Houston.
Yes, definitely.
That was one of the best rushing lines.
That was one of the best pass rushing units in the NFL. So if you lose to that, I mean, like, I hear you, but and this is the thing. I gotta relook at his exhibition season as well. He played well in the exhibition season. Now, it wasn't always against NFL starters, but he played well. I watched him all training camp. I didn't have a problem. And trust me, I watch the line very, very closely. That's my thing. That's your stuff.
Can I tell you he's going to be a top 16 offensive lineman as a second-year player? No, I can't tell you that. Can I tell you that he's going to be a young, promising left tackle with some upside? Yeah. He's big. He's got long arms. He moves. You can't power him into the quarterback. And he athletically gets to the second level as a blocker. Now, will he get better with more reps? Absolutely. But my only concern about him is you're facing the best of every team every single week. And what is that going to look like? And also, my other concern is when you talk about the offensive line, you moved all your protections to the right and gave everybody else help to the right because you knew that Teron Armstead had you locked. He had you locked. You were good. You ain't have to worry about over there. He had you. And everything else had to slide to the right and help to the right.
That's right.
Now you don't have that luxury anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But continue to discuss this draft. You know, there are two things that really stood out to me about this draft, other than Chris Grier trading away his draft picks. You know, you had a glaring need of cornerback, and you selected one. Tell me about this cornerback.
So I did a nice little breakdown on the Miami Herald, and we're talking specifically about Jason Marshall Jr. And the immediate thing that stood out about Jason Marshall Jr. for me, and this is something I asked Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel, was how do you guys balance production versus scheme fit, right? Because, you know, as you said, they had a big need at cornerback, and more specifically, I believe that they should look at a cornerback who is a ball hawk, considering the lack of interceptions from that position. The thing about
PBU master.
Yes. The thing about Jason Marshall, however, is that he did not have any interceptions over his last 2 years at the University of Florida. Look, he's a big guy, 6 foot, 200 pounds, right? So he brings that size. He has the quickness. But in terms of zone coverage specifically, he needs to improve, like 100%. He needs to be a better zone guy. And there's times where I don't want to say his effort wasn't there, but you could get him with a little misdirection. You could get him with the play action. He's his eyes are,
he wasn't disciplined. I disciplined,
right? And then when those bigger plays happened, there wasn't necessarily that all out showing out to try to go make the play, right? And so that to me is an issue, especially considering the glaring hole at corner now that Ramsey is essentially has 1 foot out the door, and then they don't have Kendall Fuller, right? So it to me, it was a little bit unfortunate that they traded those 2 picks, because to your point, like there was, I believe, like 9 corners taken in the 3rd round, I believe, right? It was a very high number. It went.
I mean, but you knew. Here's the thing: you knew what you were doing when you did it. You knew that too. And my only justification for that is, and this is what I have heard: don't draft a 5th round talent in the 3rd round just because he's the best of what's available. Give everybody their appropriate grade.
That's fair.
Put them in their appropriate slots.
Yeah.
And if you felt like you were going to get a 5th round talent in the 3rd round, why not just get a 5th round talent in the 5th round and move that pick to future years? But you left yourself some glaring holes. Now, Barry Jackson, our colleague with the Miami Herald, is reporting that the Dolphins are having conversations with Rasul Douglas, veteran cornerback. And Chris Grier said all weekend, and when I say all weekend, I mean all weekend, that he plans to be aggressive in the 3rd wave of free agency. And that means on Monday, the compensatory pick formula is no longer factored in. It's no longer calculated. You can go sign whoever you want, and it's not going to mess with your compensatory pick formula. So Dolphins, the compensatory pick formula, Javon Holland, they should get a high draft pick for Javon Holland.
Oh, definitely.
Now, if you signed a cornerback for respectable money, that factors into whether that Javon Holland compensatory pick is a 3rd rounder, 4th rounder, or 5th rounder. Once you do it on Monday, it does not factor in anymore. Yeah. And there are still some good players like a Rasul Douglas, like an Asante Samuel, that are still out there as veteran cornerbacks. And I say this all the time: about 40% of the NFL already lives in South Florida. So it's not hard, or Florida. It's not South Florida, but Florida in general, because some people live on the West Coast. Some people, Isaiah Wynn lives on the West Coast. Some people live in the Jacksonville area. Some people live in Orlando. So it's not hard to get guys to sign here. Now, the only issue that I have is, are you getting the right guys? Are they culture fits? And there's clearly a very big movement to get the right kind of culture fits. I think the Jalen Ramsey divorce has more to do with culture and players not buying in As we talked in the media contingent, we asked Chris Greer can this be fixed between Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins, and he's like, never say never, but And we asked Mike McDaniel, yo, Mike, what's going on with you and Jalen Ramsey? And Mike, who has never avoided a question ever in his life, avoided this question.
For sure.
And I know more than I'm saying, but I'm not, if I don't feel comfortable with what I have, I'm not the type of reporter that puts it out there. I need to do a little bit more conversations and digging and finding out because there's a black side of the story, then there's a white side of the story. Not black, white, but there's a black side of the story, there's a white side of the story. And when you put them all together, it's gray. Yeah. And until I get to the gray and able to put everything together and make it make sense, I generally do not like to share information with y'all. Yeah. So what we do know now is Jalen Ramsey ain't bleeping with y'all. And y'all don't want Jalen Ramsey around. Yeah. And and you got to find a trade partner more than likely. And June 1st is the date that you could trade Jalen Ramsey, because then you get $8.9 million in cap space back, as opposed to trading him before that, where you lose $8-point-something million in cap space. Yeah. Jalen Ramsey will be moved when they get around to it, but more than likely he's not going to be here. And I think everybody is okay with that. Now, does that mean you're going to be...
Except probably Anthony Weaver.
What you mean, huh?
Weaver probably is not okay with that, if I had to guess. The way, look. Mike McDaniel and Perk and I were talking about this a little bit last night. Like our great colleague Christopher Perkins over there at the South Florida Sun Sentinel. They really kind of screwed him a little bit. Calais is gone, right? Now, we're not gonna sign any really reputable corners. You know what I'm saying? With the loss of
not now.
And by the way, what you don't know is that we're gonna ruin the relationship with your star corner. That's essentially how they did Weaver.
Or maybe the starting corner ruined the relationship himself. Don't blame that on them.
I'm not gonna look.
Oh, hey, in a divorce, there are two sides to the story.
That is very true.
In a divorce, there are two sides to the story. Don't just believe one side without hearing from the other side. And the thing is, in a divorce, unfortunately, friends pick sides. If you with the wife, you gotta rock with the wife. You can't rock with the husband no more.
I'm always pro player though. I'm always pro player. Like I'm. That's just. To me, that's where I try to stand. Like because the organization they got agendas. Players have their own agendas too, right? They definitely have their own agendas. I'm definitely not knocking that, but at the same time, like they own significantly less amount of the power.
That's true. But then I agree with you. But then there are certain players. There are not a lot of them, but certain players who, when they have the hammer, they swing that joker and they bust your walls down. And Jalen Ramsey is one of those players. So, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, listen, and I love those players because it's very rare that the Rabbits got the gun. Yeah. So I love when the Rabbit has the gun. That's but that's my thing. I'm not going to sit here and say there was a right person and a wrong person in this. It is just a divorce. Yeah. And it's moved on. Here's the thing. You could always say, Chris Greer says, sometimes never say never, because you never know. If you would have asked me a year ago if Xavier Howard would ever play for the Miami Dolphins, I would tell you, hell no. Mm-hmm. If you ask me right now, would Xavier Howard play for the Miami Dolphins? I'll tell you, yeah, it's a possibility. Xavier wants to play. He just doesn't want to relocate. And he's fallen in love with being a parent to his kids and being in his kid's life and taking his daughter to her equestrian practices and gymnastics. And the year away from football made him fall in love with being a parent, but he still wants to play.
Yeah.
If you want to play, you're going to have to move away. Sometimes my point in this is saying, never say never. That's the one thing I respect about Chris Greer. He's always said that. He never closed the door on Xavier Howard. Xavier closed it on him, but he never closed the door on Xavier. And lo and behold, if you ask me right now, if they put a respectable $5 million offer or $4 million offer on the table for Xavier and say, come on home, I bet you Xavier sign it. And bygones be bygones. Because to him right now, family is more important than all that bull.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So am I stressing about the cornerback position? Not really. And they already told you day one. What did Chris Greer tell you? You know what? We figured out in history, you can get by with a lot of late round guys. He's shown you 5 straight years. I found undrafted cornerbacks that could play in the NFL. Yeah. Nick Needham was a starter for like a year and a half here. Kader Kohu has been a 3-year starter here. And I can't tell you Kader Kohu was any worse than anybody drafted in the year that he came out in the draft. Yeah. You never know. So, but getting back to the draft, you know what I found very interesting about this draft, and you touched on it a little bit earlier. 3 nose tackles. Not 3 defensive tackles. 3 nose tackles. Nose tackles, I've always known this for 20 years. People have told me this. Nose tackles are one of the hardest positions to find in the NFL.
Why is that?
Quarterbacks. Because there are very few humans who are 330, 340 pounds who can take on 2 600-pound guys trying to move them anchor down and have cat-like quickness. Those humans, they're I forget what they call it. They have a term for it where it's like a rare. These are like one of the rarest humans on earth, like the Vince Wilforks of the world. Because I remember when I covered Vince Wilfork at the University of Miami. Vince was 350 pounds and could dunk a basketball. Yeah. And I wouldn't believe it. I'm sorry. I'm telling you, I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. Wow. They would play pickup basketball, all of them, Sean Taylor, Antro Roll, John DeVilma, all of them. They play pickup basketball. Yeah. And Vince was in there, 350 pounds. Wow. I was like, holy crap.
That's very impressive.
Those humans don't exist. Yeah. They're like LeBron. They're like finding LeBron James. Those humans do not exist. They don't make a lot of them in this world. That's right. So for the Dolphins to go and draft 3 of them in Kendall Grant, Jordan Phillips, and Zeke Biggers,
Kenneth Grant, and Jordan Phillips. Yes.
I was quite intrigued. And here's the thing, I make fun of the Jordan Phillips situation because everybody knows about my long-standing beef with Jordan Phillips, former Dolphins, University of Miami. Okay. I mean, former Dolphins 2nd-round pick. And so I have people in the coaching business and people in college ranks as well that I've grown up with in this business, or this guy's actually like somebody I went to high school with, and told me first prospect ever in the 2025 draft. Yo, you need to look at Jordan Phillips. Take a look at him. And I'm like, my initial reaction, like, yo, bro, I ain't messing with nobody with that name. Like, but this kid is a complete worker. Yeah. First guy in, last guy out, smart. I put out the scouting report on him on Twitter, where basically he's young. He's not super athletic, but he's 20. And they're like, he's going to be a way better pro when he grows up. Yeah. So by the time he gets his second deal, he'll be 24. Yeah. And the projection is that this guy will be a starting nose tackle in the NFL. he works too hard to not make it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Zeke Biggers, but Kenneth Grant, man, as I said in the previous podcast we did, I started looking at Michigan film to look at Graham and Will Johnson, and I was like, yo, this Grant dude, he pretty good.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I brought down my view of Graham because of how good Grant was. And I felt like and said, Graham is eating off the table that Grant sets for him. Because Graham ain't taking on two blockers. You know who's taking on two blockers?
Kenneth Grant, Kenny G.
Yeah. And if they didn't need to give him two blockers, he wouldn't have two blockers. So you would think, oh, the superstar is Graham, right? Okay, let's put two on him. They don't put two on him.
Yeah.
It's two on the other guy. So, it's interesting to see what will come out. I believe Christian Wilkins, I can't remember the name of, I think it was Clinton Farrell. Christian Wilkins had a player on his Clemson team that they worked together in tandem as well. Maybe I can't remember who it was.
It wasn't Dexter Lawrence. That was like the year after, right?
I think he was at Alabama. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Clinton Farrell. And they'd eat off each other. Yeah. And right now, you can argue that Christian Wilkins might have had a comparable, if not better, career. And Christian Wilkins was the inferior player. So you never know. It's really about how the guys work, what their commitment level is, and moving forward, what they want to, how they coach and what they want to invest. What I like about this is Anthony Weaver, he's a defensive line coach. And that's how he worked his way up the league. So if these are the three guys that he wants, I'm rocking with it.
Yeah, I got to see it. I want to see it come together. This to me, I think is, I said it on the last podcast, like, put aside the cornerback situation for a second because they need it. Like, just based off of the quarterbacks that they face next year, which I just want to run down that list real quick.
Please give me the whole list. Don't give me half the list. Give me the whole list. Okay. I've never even thought about this.
Okay, Michael Penix. They play obviously Josh Allen twice, right?
Yeah.
Bryce Young.
Now he gets his best quarterback twice.
Yeah.
I ain't worried about him.
Twice. Drake May twice. They should probably be a little bit worried about Jake.
Oh, I ain't worried about him.
Drake May almost got him the second game, so let's calm down. They got whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns. But this to me is where it's going to get a little bit scary, right? I said Josh Allen, right? Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield, and then those. To me, Tampa's more so about those receivers, right? And they added Emeka Egbuka, right? Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka. That's three people you don't have to.
I worry more about Todd Bowles' defense than I do about Baker Mayfield. But go on, continue. I hear you. Todd Bowles like putting his foot in rear of the Miami Dolphins. Let's be real about it.
That's fair.
That's fair. But I'm not worried about. Okay, you know the quarterback on your list I'm worried about the most?
Which one?
Is my daddy, Josh Allen. You know a quarterback on your list I'm worried about the second most? Is Aaron Rodgers, because he put boot in ass last year.
Wait, are you breaking some news right now? Is he going to the Steelers?
Listen. When Aaron finally figure out that he want to play and he want to accept what Pittsburgh is giving him, he'll be in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin ain't stressing over that. Look at how they conducted themselves in the draft. And if worst case scenario, they just gonna pull the trigger and go get Kirk Cousins. Like, they'll be all right. Mike Tomlin ain't worried. Does he look like he's stressing?
Hey, but Mike Tomlin
ain't worried about nothing.
Yeah,
Mike Tomlin ain't worried about nothing. Huh?
Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne.
No, it was Montana, French Montana.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Wasn't
Look
it
at
featuring Lil Wayne?
you. Huh?
Wasn't it featuring Lil Wayne? No,
No.
this song is no wait, no, this song is Lil Wayne. Look me in my face. I ain't got no. That's Lil Wayne.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we think about two different. Ain't worried about nothing. You know, I'm the friend. Ron, I in my beamer.
Oh yeah. Oh my bad. I'm thinking No Worries. I'm thinking No Worries by Lil Wayne.
Yeah. We but
Okay.
either one applies to Mike Tomlin. Either one applies to Mike Tomlin. He ain't worried. Listen, and he want volunteers, not hostages.
That's real. That's real. That's real. I think I forgot to actually get to the point I was saying earlier. Look, I think the defensive front has potential, right? Like that pass rush. If you look at that three-way combination of Chubb, Robinson, Phillips, right? You got Sealer and KG on the interior. Like that potentially could keep opposing offensive coordinators up at night a little bit. Just that pass rush alone, right? Now you're gonna have to have guys, right, that can cover and allow that pass rush to do what it needs to do, right? Because they work in 10, right? And I think last year you had a little bit better from a coverage standpoint, right? And so this year is going to be the exact opposite. You're probably going to have a little bit worse from a coverage standpoint, but that pass rush is going to be able to get there a little bit faster. So I just look. That's where if that's where the Dolphins are going to hang their hat on in 2025. That's not necessarily a bad thing, considering what you said earlier, Weaver's history as a defensive line coach, right? So, but they do need a corner. Let's not act like they don't need a corner. Hopefully Rasul Douglas.
Let me
Asante Samuel Jr. Go ahead.
Let me plant this in your mind.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just I'm not telling you nothing I've heard.
Okay.
Let me just plant this seed in your mind.
Okay.
You go get Rasul Douglas and Xavier Howard. You sign him. You good?
Yeah, I'll take that. What's the price point? What's the price point?
Less than four on both.
Okay. Wait. So you think Rasul Douglas will sign for that amount? I think Xavier will, but Rasul will. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You if you're a free agent right now, you're not making more than 5.
Okay.
And that's a high end.
That's the Perkin I was having last night, because he said Asante Samuel, Rasul Douglas are not signing for anything less than 10. And
no, they're not getting 10. No.
10?
Yeah, they're not getting anything. They're not getting anything close to 10. Asante Samuel has a shoulder injury that is a little bit more complicated than people know. So I'm not even sure he's going to sign before the season begins or training camp gets going. So whoever gets him is going to have to rehab a shoulder. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But as we said from jump, and as Chris Kerr has told you about 3,000 times, I got a plan at cornerback. Y'all just hold on. Y'all just hold on. I got things working. I got some and if you move down into the 5th round and you select one cornerback and throw in a running back and a quarterback, he could have thrown in a running back. And they signed the UCF cornerback. That's pretty good. BJ Adams, I think they had him in for a 30 visit. Listen, they have a belief and a conviction that they can find cornerbacks. Now, can they find elite cornerbacks? No. And maybe they living on the pipe dream that Cam Smith will actually become something. So, or Ethan Bonner, White Lightning, as they call him, you don't know. We don't know. I mean, plenty of guys have opportunity. It's what you do when the opportunity presents itself. Remember Brent Grimes? Brent Grimes started his career as a practice squad player with the Atlanta Falcons and then became a superstar. You never know.
That's true.
Nick Needham was Nick Needham, who is signed with the Cleveland Browns. We never addressed that. And I have the greatest I have the greatest amount of respect for Nick Needham because he got it out in the mud. He got it out in the mud and he kept it, and then he got hurt, and then he lost it. But I'm not counting him out because this is a kid that's been counted out all his life. I love those players. And now you got a whole cornerback unit with those players because I damn sure I'm counting Cam Smith out. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, look, I think it's better to play with that chip on your shoulder, right? A chip on your shoulder can only mean good things to me, at least in the game of football, right? And so, look, no one is going to be really thinking twice as it stands right now. If the cornerback unit doesn't, improve right now, and even if it gets a Russell Douglas or Asante Samuel Jr., whatever combination of cornerbacks, people are not going to think twice about them. So you got to use it. What's the popular Michael Irvin meme? What are you going to do? This is your house. What are you going to do? So that's the kind of mindset that the cornerback group, regardless of who's going to be in it now, is going to have.
So, well, folks, that's breaking down the draft. I want to end with this.
Okay.
I want you, Isaiah, to give a grade that you would give the Miami Dolphins, the too early prognostication grade, and explain your grade for the NFL draft.
I want to say C+.
Okay.
It was okay. It was okay. I think they got good talent at definitely defensive tackle with Kenny G. I personally wanted them to grab a corner in that third round. Right. I truly believe that they needed a corner in that third round. They went for a guy that doesn't necessarily have that. Wasn't a ball hawk, right? At least to me, right? So look, that's the only reason why I'm grading it down. If they just would have, invested and they invested heavily on the trenches, right? So you got to give them credit for that. That's why it's a C+, right? But at the same time, you only got one, starter on the offensive line, presumed starter on the offensive line, right? And they didn't, I guess they weren't high on any of the guys in later rounds, right? So they just said, to hell with it, we're just gonna get this guy. This is our guy, boom. Right. So I say C+ because I think they got some good value, but they gave up a little bit to get, some of these guys. Right. And then they also, they have a future. They got that future third round pick, which, is definitely valuable. But I think they might have given up a little bit too much for Jonah Savannah. As it stands now, it looks like a little bit too much. So that's why I'm going to say C+. It was average. It was about average. What about you?
I go a little higher. I go B-, and I go B- for a number of reasons. I wanted them to go into this draft and fortify their trenches. Mm-hmm. They picked 3 nose tackles. 3. That's that you could put those 3 with Zach Sealer and Benito Jones. You should be good on the interior defensive line.
Yeah.
And then I said and threatened. There are 10 elite players in this offensive lineman in this draft.
Yeah.
Whether I agree with the number of 10 and who is the 10, and I couldn't tell you who was the 10th guy, but I knew who was the 9th guy. It was Jonah Savannah.
Yeah.
And they did what they needed to do to go get him. I needed you to get 1.
Yeah.
And you did get 1. So I give you a bonus point for that.
Okay.
The running back, Ollie Gordon.
Yeah.
Woo! Woo!
That's a good pick. I'm a big fan of that pick.
Huh?
I'm a big fan of the pick.
And he struggled last year. There's a lot of reasons why guys struggle. I don't even know why he was even back. Because he should have went to the draft last year.
Yeah, he should have went to the draft last year. Yeah, for sure.
And maybe they were offering him more money than the draft. Maybe the money got to him. I don't know. That's a story that I'm definitely interested in. Yeah. But look at that 2024 film. Woo! And brings that wood. Yeah. And then the other reason I give them a B- is that 2026 third round pick. And the way you dominated that trade in terms of trade value, getting back the equivalent of, I believe it was an early fourth, in just the victory of points that you had, which was like 44 points, it's the equivalent of an extra 4th round pick. So you got a third and then a pick that has the value of an extra 4th round pick in that trade. You just dominated it, which is why you couldn't turn it down. It just didn't make any sense to me. Unless, wink, wink, you throwing in Jalen Ramsey later on for like a 7th round pick. Like that trade don't make sense. But then you look at it, Houston doesn't need a cornerback. So that doesn't even make sense. So I'm like, damn, how you dominate like that in the trade and then get a future asset for the future?
Yeah.
Whether not even knowing if you're gonna be able to use it.
Yeah.
So so I gotta give you a W for that. So that's where I stand. And as Chris says, with the rest of us, and then Dante Fowler, Dante
Trader.
The safety from Maryland. I have not looked at his film yet, but man, that kid has some charisma to him. I liked him a lot. Just talking to him, I can see why they fell in love with him.
Hey, he's a Delaware guy. What can I say?
lacrosse all-star who happened to play football.
Yeah.
I really like talking to him now. I hope he can play. And I've been here long enough to see this organization start late round. Chris Clemens, Rashad Jones, see them start Brandon Jones. They start safeties. You don't have to draft them high for them to pan out and develop. So I'm excited to see where that goes. So on that note, I'm a B-. Later on in the Dolphins in depth, we will have some draft evaluators. I believe Simon Clancy will be joining us to sort of break down the players and some of the undrafted guys. I'm probably going to try to get Emory Hunt to come back because Emory Hunt, man, he's going to be able to break down a lot of those undrafted players. And we'll see what people who actually do this for a living think about the prospects and think about the fits for the Miami Dolphins later on Dolphins in depth.
For sure.